They called it the Summit of Unity. To the galaxy, it was a grand symbol. Leaders from across dozens of species gathered at the core, the shining heart of civilization, to discuss peace and cooperation. For Earth, it was supposed to be their long-awaited chance to secure equal standing among the stars. Humanity had fought, traded, and bled alongside other worlds for decades. They had earned their place. Or so they thought. Ambassador Jonathan Reyes stood before the Council's dais, the silver crest of Earth on his chest, his voice steady as he delivered the opening statement on behalf of humanity. He never got to finish it. A single sharp order echoed in the chamber. Security drones whirred to life, plasma rifles charging. Reyes froze, confusion flashing across his face, then the first shot took him in the chest. He fell without a sound. On the broadcast screens, the Council speaker declared humanity guilty of repeated acts of aggression and refusal to submit to interstellar law. They claimed Earth's fleets were illegal, their colonies unlawful. The sentence was permanent removal from the galactic community. The rest of the human delegation was executed right there, live, for every world to see. The message was clear: humanity would either submit to the Council or be erased. Earth's silence. The galaxy waited for Earth to beg. For weeks, no transmission came. No protests. No declarations of war. It was almost as if Earth had been broken by the blow. Some of the Council members believed that. Others feared something far worse. They were right. The arrival. On the 33rd day after the executions, deep space sensors across the mid-rim began sounding alarms. Unregistered warp signatures, hundreds of them, spilled out of the void. They weren't like any ships the galaxy knew. They were massive, angular, built for nothing but war. Their hulls shimmered with adaptive plating, bristling with weapons arrays that shifted and locked into place like predators baring their fangs. At their head was the UNS Retribution, the largest human warship ever constructed, rumored to have been built in secret far beyond known space. No warning was given. No demands were made. They began to strike. The Blitz. Human war doctrine had always been different. Where the Council favored slow sieges and diplomatic pressure, Earth's strategy was speed and overwhelming force. In the first 24 hours, 3 Council shipyards were reduced to twisted metal drifting in the void. Orbital bombardments rained down on fortress worlds. Defense fleets barely had time to form before they were torn apart by railguns that could punch clean through a battleship in a single shot. It was not war as the Council knew it. It was extermination of infrastructure, swift, precise, merciless. Planetary shields? Human ships overloaded them with focused particle beams in minutes. Carrier groups? Vaporized by long-range kinetic strikes before their fighters could even launch. Every strike was broadcast live by terrified witnesses. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the Council's unbreakable fleets shattered like glass. The core burns. By the second week, the war was no longer about winning, it was about survival. Refugee ships streamed out of Council space, fleeing anywhere that wasn't in the path of Earth's fleet. On the 14th day, the fleet emerged from slipspace right above the Council's capital world. The planet was a jewel of the galaxy, a sprawling city world of towers and spires, home to trillions. Its orbital ring glittered with defense platforms, each armed with enough firepower to hold off an invasion for weeks. The humans destroyed it in under 2 hours. Coordinated missile barrages ripped apart the platforms, scattering molten fragments into the atmosphere. Railgun slugs the size of trucks slammed into the planet's crust, turning districts into blazing craters. The oceans boiled where kinetic rods struck from orbit. The Council's palace, the same hall where Earth's diplomats had been executed, was obliterated by a single precision strike from the UNS Retribution. There were no speeches. No gloating. Just fire. Aftermath. When the smoke finally cleared, nothing of the Council's military power remained. The capital's skyline was a jagged graveyard of metal and ash. Fleet command centers across their territory lay in ruins. The galaxy waited for Earth's demands, territory, resources, surrender treaties. But the transmission that finally came from the fleet's flagship contained only 5 words. the account is settled. Goodbye. The human fleet withdrew as suddenly as it had appeared, vanishing into the black. They didn't stay to occupy worlds or install new rulers. They didn't need to. The message was burned into the galaxy's memory: betray Earth, and there will be no negotiations, only fire. Legacy of the Retribution. In the years that followed, the galaxy rebuilt, but the Council never reformed. Its member states remained fractured, each too wary to take a leading role. And in the quiet corners of space, rumors spread. Some said the UNS Retribution still roamed the void, watching. Others claimed Earth had built even larger ships, waiting for the next betrayal. No one knew for sure. No one dared to find out. Because everyone remembered the day the humans came, not as diplomats, not as allies, but as executioners. And they left nothing standing. The last transmission. The council chamber was filled with the hum of alien voices, dozens of species in flowing robes, metallic carapaces glinting under the white lights. To Captain Mara Vance, watching the live feed from the bridge of the UNS Vanguard, they looked less like diplomats and more like vultures circling a corpse. On screen, Earth's ambassador, Elias Renard, stood at the central podium, flanked by 2 security drones. His voice was steady as he made his final plea for humanity's place among the stars. Then, without warning, the council speaker raised a hand. Humanity is found guilty of systemic aggression, territorial expansion, and the willful disruption of interstellar law, the alien declared in a cold, clicking tone. The penalty: eradication. The drones pivoted, their plasma rifles charging with a rising whine. Renard's eyes widened for a fraction of a second before the first blast tore through his chest. The second shot vaporized his head. The broadcast cut to the Council's emblem. That was the last anyone saw of Earth's diplomats. The silence before the storm. Mara stood frozen, her hands curling into fists at her sides. Around her, the bridge was silent, no one dared speak. The execution had been streamed across every major network, the Council making sure the entire galaxy witnessed the humiliation and destruction of Earth's representatives. The expectation was simple: humanity would protest, send envoys, plead for mercy. But the fleet commanders knew better. When the Council killed an ambassador, it wasn't a declaration of dominance, it was an invitation to war. Orders from the Black. 2 days later, encrypted orders arrived on the Vanguard's comms. No speeches, no justifications, just target coordinates and an activation code. Operation Scythe was in motion. The human fleet had been quietly expanding for years, far beyond what the Council believed possible. Hidden shipyards in the Kuiper Belt and deep space colonies produced warships the galaxy had never seen. They weren't built for deterrence, they were built for annihilation. Mara's Vanguard was one of them. A Titan-class dreadnought, its spine lined with railguns that could shatter a moon's crust, and a new kind of weapon, the Helios Lance, that could burn through planetary shields in seconds. The orders were clear: no quarter. The first strike. The fleet's first target was not a planet, but the relay nexus, the central hub of the Council's slipstream network. The battle lasted 37 minutes. Human destroyers flooded the system, disabling defense satellites with precision EMP bursts. Frigates followed, launching volleys of tungsten slugs that punched through the nexus-reinforced structure like it was paper. The final blow came from the Vanguard herself, a Helios beam that turned the central station into a white-hot plume of molten debris. With the nexus gone, the Council's fleets were isolated, unable to reinforce one another. The trap was sprung. The campaign of silence. Over the next 8 days, human warships moved like shadows across the galaxy. There were no declarations, no ultimatums, only destruction. Council shipyards? Gone. Orbital defense grids? Silent husks drifting in space. Fleets? Ambushed and torn apart before they could form a defensive line. Each strike was methodical, surgical. Humanity wasn't conquering, they were erasing the Council's ability to ever threaten them again. Mara's crew began to notice a strange pattern. Every surviving enemy ship that tried to surrender was allowed to transmit one final message home before being destroyed. It was psychological warfare on a galactic scale. Fear was spreading faster than the fleet itself. The fall of the capital. On the 11th day, the fleet arrived at Erythra Prime, the Council's capital world. Its orbital ring bristled with weapons, planetary shields gleaming like a second atmosphere. The planet had been the seat of galactic power for centuries. It fell in 6 hours. The Vanguard and her sister ships targeted the shield generators first, concentrating Helios beams until the barriers cracked. Once the shield fell, the bombardment began a coordinated railgun fire and kinetic strikes that shattered defensive towers and plunged entire districts into darkness. Council fleets scrambled to defend the skies, but they were met with a wall of missile fire and particle beams that cut through their formations like flame through silk. By sunset, the planet's surface was a web of burning scars visible from orbit. The last transmission. Mara stood on the bridge, her face illuminated by the fires below. The comm officer turned toward her. "Captain, the Council's remaining leaders are requesting communication. They want terms." Mara thought of Elias Renard's final moments. Of the way the Council had broadcast his death for all to see. Her voice was ice when she replied. "Open a channel." The holographic projection flickered to life 6 surviving counselors, their regal robes stained with soot, faces pale with fear. One began to speak, voice trembling. "Humanity, perhaps we have." Mara cut them off. "This is Captain Mara Vance of the UNS Vanguard. Your crimes have been answered." She nodded to the comm officer, who transmitted the pre-recorded message from the fleet's high command. "Justice is served." That was all. The channel cut. Moments later, the Vanguard fired her final Helios lance into the Council's Grand Assembly Tower, reducing it to vapor. Nothing left behind. When the smoke cleared, there was no more Council. Their fleets were gone, their political structures collapsed. Surviving worlds found themselves leaderless, scattered, and terrified. Earth didn't stay to occupy territory. The fleet withdrew, vanishing into deep space as swiftly as it had appeared. In their absence, the galaxy was left with a simple truth: humanity had no interest in ruling the stars but betray them, and there would be no survivors. Whispers in the dark. In the years that followed, smugglers and traders spoke in hushed tones about the day of silence, when Earth's fleet had moved like a shadow, erasing the most powerful government in the galaxy in less than 2 weeks. Some claimed the Vanguard still prowled the edges of known space, her captain watching for the next threat. Others swore they'd seen even larger ships in the black, silent as tombs, waiting for the signal to strike. Whether true or not, one thing was certain: no species dared provoke humanity again. Because they all remembered that final message. Justice is served. And the terrible silence that followed. The Council's declaration came on a cold morning in Geneva. Earth's colonies in the Helion cluster had been seized overnight, their populations relocated to so-called processing worlds. The official charge: illegal expansion into Council-protected space. It was a lie. For centuries, Earth had abided by the Council's laws, trading honestly, defending member worlds from pirates, and sending its brightest minds to aid in galactic research. But in the shadows, the Council had always feared humanity, our rapid growth, our stubborn independence, our refusal to kneel. Now they had acted. They thought humanity would bow, as so many others had. They were wrong. The Forgotten Fleet. Far beyond the Council's surveillance range, in the uncharted Perseus expanse, an armada waited. It was known only to a handful of Earth's leaders, a project born in the aftermath of the First Contact Wars. These were not the modest patrol craft the galaxy had seen at trade convoys and peacekeeping missions. They were predators, planet-cracking dreadnoughts, stealth frigates with hulls that swallowed light, missile cruisers whose payloads could shatter continents. For decades, they had drilled in the black, refining tactics no alien strategist had ever witnessed. The galaxy thought humanity was a minor player. In truth, the real fleet had never left home space. Now, it was time to unleash it. The first flames. The war began without a formal declaration. 3 Council relocation worlds, really prison camps, were the first to burn. In simultaneous strikes, human drop teams breached their defenses, freed tens of thousands of captives, and left the facilities as smoldering craters. Survivors told stories of soldiers in matte black armor, moving like ghosts through the smoke, and of the warships that covered their escape, behemoths whose weapons carved burning lines across the sky. The Council denounced the attacks as terrorism. But their fear was beginning to show. Shock and shatter. The Council's fleets were vast, but they were predictable. They fought by the book, forming walls of ships, advancing in measured steps. Humanity fought differently. We didn't meet them head-on. We appeared where they were weakest, striking and vanishing before they could react. Slipstream disruptors dropped enemy reinforcements out of warp into ambush zones, where entire battle groups were torn apart in minutes. Kinetic strikes from orbit reduced planetary command centers to molten glass before enemy ships even knew a battle had begun. By the fourth week, 9 major Council worlds were dark, communications cut, fleets destroyed, infrastructure gone. The day Irinder fell. Irinder was a fortress world. Its orbital defenses were said to be impenetrable, its surface ringed with anti-ship cannons powerful enough to swat down a dreadnought in a single volley. The Council considered it unassailable. Humanity took it in under 8 hours. Stealth corvettes slipped past the outer defenses, planting charges on the orbital platform's power relays. When the platforms went dark, the dreadnought UNS Black Horizon moved in, unleashing a Helios lance that punched straight through Irinder's planetary shield. Dropships followed, delivering shock troops to seize the capital while railgun bombardments silenced the outer cities. By nightfall, the Council's banner was torn down, replaced with nothing at all. Fire from the Black. They began calling it that in the Council's own propaganda, Fire from the Black. Ships emerging from the dark between stars, striking without warning, and vanishing again. World after world fell. Sometimes the fleet destroyed shipyards and left the cities untouched, other times, the cities themselves became targets, punishment for housing Council garrisons or processing centers. The brutality was precise. Humanity wasn't here to conquer. We were here to dismantle the Council, piece by piece. The capital burns. The final blow came when the human fleet reached Zyphera, the beating heart of the Council. The planet's defense grid lit up the void with overlapping fields of energy, a web of protection generations in the making. It lasted just long enough for the first railgun salvo to land. From orbit, the UNS Black Horizon and her sister ships rained fire on the capital for 11 straight hours. Towers of polished crystal collapsed into rivers of molten glass. Defense ships burned in the upper atmosphere, their debris falling like deadly meteors onto the cities below. The Council's Grand Forum, where humanity's fate had been decided in absentia, was obliterated by a kinetic rod strike that split the building down the middle, leaving a smoking canyon where the galaxy's leaders had once stood. The message. When it was over, a single transmission went out to the surviving Council worlds. It wasn't sent in the common trade tongue. It was sent in English, untranslatable by machine, carrying a weight the aliens could only guess at. The voice was calm, steady. This was not conquest. This was correction. The Council is no more. Betray humanity again, and there will be nothing left. Then the signal cut. Aftermath. The fleet did not linger to claim territory. They did not install new rulers or demand tribute. They left the wreckage behind, pulling back into the same black void from which they had come. The galaxy was left in shock. Trade routes collapsed without the Council's coordination. Old rivalries reignited as former allies scrambled for power. But no one dared to target human space. Not after what they'd seen. The phrase "Fire from the Black" became a warning, whispered in every port and station. And whenever a new warlord rose too quickly, there were rumors, unverified, unprovable, of black-hulled ships appearing on their borders, watching. The fleet waits. Back in the Perseus expanse, the great ships of Earth floated in silence, their hulls cold and dark, waiting. The war was over, for now. But humanity had learned the truth: peace in the galaxy was fragile, and trust was a weapon that could be turned against you. The Council had thought betrayal would break us. Instead, it had forged something far more dangerous. The next time the galaxy came for Earth, it wouldn't just face the fleet. It would face a species that had already burned an empire to ash and left nothing standing.